this. All right. Well, I am so excited for you guys to join us today. What our goal is to provide a high level look at, homeschooling, when you're starting out that journey. So I tend to talk to a lot of moms that, are in the beginning stages of homeschooling, whether they've made that decision for their family or, they're, 6 months into that journey. And through my conversations, I know that there's a lot of information that you have coming at you, lots of decisions you have to make about how that's going to look for your family. What's the best schedule? What is the best curriculum? How to enrich that education and make sure that you're bringing your child everything that, they need to grow and develop as little human beings. As well as, how you can make that transition down the road. So whether your child's journey looks like college bound or they're career bound, or maybe we're just trying to get them as far along in life as possible. How can we go about, making this journey something that's meaningful for your child, but also something that you as a mom can survive and do it in a way that's, pain-free. So what we want to talk about here today, and I have Donna here with me, and I'm going to go over her background in just a moment, but how to go about selecting a curriculum, what different options are out there, how to go about, enriching your child's education, what pitfalls not to fall into, because it can be easy with everything being home to kind of get caught in a certain space that maybe doesn't make that experience great for you, mom, or for your kiddo. And then, just where to ask for help, like what types of resources are out there, to help you with this journey. So I have here with me today, Donna, and I've had the pleasure of working with her for over 6 months now. She lives in Mexico, actually, so she's one of my online tutors, but she is absolutely phenomenal. She's worked with a handful of students through my company and comes very highly recommended from all the moms that have worked with her. But what's really cool about Donna's background is not only does she, have a BA in English and a minor in Spanish, so she's been a really great with my struggling readers and my kids looking to learn a different language. But in addition to her tutoring experience, she's been both a public educator, so she's worked in the public school system for 10 years teaching English and reading skills, teaching Spanish, teaching geography, history. She's been involved at a lot of different levels in the school system, but she also was a homeschool parent herself. So she spent 8 years with her kiddos, homeschooling them. So she's very familiar with what a structured approach can look like, as well as what it looks like when you take that education into the home. And I think she's kind of been through a lot of different spaces and seen, some of the times when she kind of got caught in an inflexible schedule that maybe was kind of pushing education to the side, but also, learning how to kind of come in with a plan to just kind of make things flow and make life a little bit easier for her and her kiddos and make that journey something that she truly enjoyed. So I'm excited to turn it over to her. She's going to talk with you guys, about all of these different things, share her experience, and, just how to maybe go about this journey in a way that will be meaningful to you. So I'll turn it over to you, Donna.
Thanks so much, Kim. And yes, it has been a journey, and I have loved. I am not here to sell homeschool. I'm here to because I love homeschool and I love traditional classroom. I think it really depends on what season of life the family is in. It depends on the family, whether they choose that. I believe that this past year, a lot of people found themselves homeschooling and it was not something they had planned. And then there may be people watching this who might go, oh, I've been homeschooling for years, and we can always learn something. So I just hope this is a help and encouragement to anyone who has found themselves homeschooling, whether by choice or whether whether you really didn't have a choice, but you ended up doing it, and now you think, well, I kind of like this, I want to keep going. Okay, so hopefully we can give you some tools to help you with that. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to start just by looking at what are some things that work in a traditional, or what are some characteristics of a traditional classroom, and what are characteristics of homeschool? And when I began to homeschool, I began homeschooling out of necessity. We were living here in Mexico, and my kids were getting ready to go into elementary school. They had been in school here in kindergarten. I wanted them to learn Spanish. And then I realized that the school system here didn't offer what, at least at that time, the school that was near us didn't have what we needed. And so I said, I'm going to go ahead and homeschool and give it a shot. Ended up loving it, ended up doing it for 8 years. And a lot of what I learned in the classroom, I was able to transfer into homeschool, but not everything. And so we're going to look just quickly at what are some of the differences. So when you're in a traditional classroom, when I taught in my classroom for the 10 years I was in the classroom, I had to teach to all learning styles at one time. Right. So I would try to incorporate different activities into my schedule during the day so that each student was able to learn according to his or her style. And also in a traditional classroom, you have students that they also learn from each other's questions. So when you're in a classroom, well, you know what, let me just go ahead. I'll just do traditional versus homeschool. It'd be easier. So, but when you're homeschooling, your lessons, you have to know your child and you have to specify that lesson to your child's learning style. And we, at the end of this workshop, we have some links for you and links for learning style assessments. If you're not sure what your child's learning style is, you may already know, but then you can cater the lesson to that. So that's a big advantage. And then in a traditional classroom, students learn from other students' questions and comments. So, Johnny has a question and he doesn't want to ask it, but Mary asks it. And then he thinks, oh, she asked the question I wanted to know. And then he gets his answer without even having to ask the question. Whereas when you're in homeschool, you're responsible for making sure that your child's questions are being answered. So sometimes that means anticipating what you believe, what question you believe they might have. And so that is a little bit more of a little bit more work on the parents' part. And then for classroom activities, many of the classroom activities that I used, they were group, they were team oriented. They didn't translate well into homeschool. So I had to come up with some extension activities that could be adapted to 1 or 2 students. I was always jealous of one of my friends because she had 8 children and she had teams and groups and I was like, if I at least had 4, then I can have 2 teams, but that wasn't.
Nothing to be jealous of.
Exactly. So, and I love that, but I was, I had 2 children, they were 3 years apart. And so, but I was able to do that, but you do have to be very creative in the activities that you can use. In a traditional classroom, of course, socialization occurs naturally all day long. You're running into meeting with not just your teachers, but you're running into teachers in the hallway and in the office and in the cafeteria and administrators and other classmates and coaches and it just goes on, and even other parents of your friends. Whereas when you're homeschooling, the socialization still occurs. It's just different. Okay, it occurs a lot within your family, within your neighbors, within friends, coaches, tutors, people in your co-op, and we'll get, as we talk about different resources that are available, you'll see. So it occurs. So the I don't like the stigma that, homeschool kids don't know how to talk to anybody. That is not true at all. And so it can happen. And then we have routines. And so routines are naturally built into a classroom. So I had to have I had to turn in my lesson plans. They were approved by the director. And then I had to stick to that pretty much, and I had to have a routine so that I could keep everyone on track. And when we're homeschooling, it's easy, at least in my case, it was easy to let that routine kind of fall to the side. But routines, and if you're a parent, routines are important, just as important in a homeschool setting. They need to be intentional, but they need to be realistic. They need to fit with your family's schedule. We can't expect to hold to in my case, 7:30 to 4 schedule just like this and nobody do anything else because we have this class and that class. It would be wonderful if that could happen, but that can't happen. It's not realistic in a family. Right? And so but we could still have a routine, and just a routine that works for our family. All right. And so now let's look at some curriculum paths. Okay, there are many. So now that, we established routine, and then there are two main paths that you can take. Okay, one is a virtual school. And in that, you basically enroll your child. Okay, you go online, the parent supervises, but the parent doesn't do the instruction. Okay, so for the most part, you might do some explaining or helping with homework, but the parent is the one supervising, but not instructing. So they have a teacher. It might be, there were some pre-recorded classes I used. There was a time when we used, when we had live satellite classes. I mean, there were many, many, many avenues there. And then, whereas if you're using, say, self-paced curriculum, so that means you go to a company and you purchase curriculum. You say you might purchase a package. Say, okay, this is first grade or this is third grade, and it usually will have everything included. Or you might feel comfortable picking and choosing curriculum from different vendors. Whatever you choose, that usually requires a lot more instruction on your part. Okay, that requires looking through the teacher's editions, looking at the instructions, looking at where we need to go, looking at the scope and sequence for the year, and you're doing a lot of the teaching and instructing, and that's fun. I love doing that. Right. So, but either way, it just depends on what's good for your family. Okay. In a virtual school, assignments are going to be graded and stored normally. Okay. So you put them in and they stay there. And at the end of the year, they will generate a transcript for you. And then there you've got your, there even, a progress report that you can give your child. When you're self-paced, you got to do that. Okay. You need it. Normally they'll give you test keys. But you do need to grade them. You have a guide there if you need it. I had a good friend of mine who I was using a test book one time, and she said, she goes, someone said, do you need the test key also? She said, oh, no. And then a friend looked at me and said, how come you need it? I said, oh, be quiet. Sometimes we just want to make sure we're getting everything right. So don't be embarrassed for using an answer key, right? Teachers do it too. No big deal. All right. And then with a virtual school, assessments are normally administered. They will give you certifications. They will issue a diploma. If it's in the case of high school, some, schools even offer graduation, so you can go to the school and all of the other homeschoolers are there and you have a graduation ceremony. And one of my friends' son did that, and it was pretty cool, and he really enjoyed it. And it was a way to celebrate with others who had gone through the process that he gone through. So, but they will do that for you. But in self-paced curriculum, you administer the tests. So you might even decide which tests you want to give or not give. And we can talk about that a little bit more, but sometimes you can give, even when I was teaching in traditional classroom, I gave placement test or pre-test. And so if I would give a pretest and my students or overall, or my child when I was homeschooling just flew through that test, I'm like, well, why am I going to spend, 2 whole weeks on this unit? There's no need. They know this concept, and then you can go on to the next thing. So that's the beauty of self-paced curriculum. You do have the freedom to do that, but you do need to keep track of the grades, you need to give the assessments, issue some certificates and diplomas and just some progress reports so that your child can see, oh, wow, look what I accomplished, makes them feel good. And then virtual school can be pricey. Okay, I've seen prices up, from a few $100s up to $5,000, $6,000 for a school year. Okay, so it really just depends on what you're looking for. There's usually a lot that's included in that price, though, and all good stuff. And so, of course, self-paced curriculum is going to be more economical. You can have, I would usually try to keep mine around $500 to $600 for the year in the books that I would get. But you can spend even less. I've seen even less than that. And there are even some that are free. Okay, so there's just a lot of variety. And then with a virtual school, the platform has a built-in schedule normally. Okay, normally they expect you to adhere to a certain schedule. Sometimes you even have to be present with a teacher, but you still need as a parent to be there to help keep your child on track. Because a child, you know, when I was teaching in school, we would do seat work, but I did not sit at my desk and watch, you know, do something else. I had to walk around through the rows in my classroom, make sure, you know, just gently tap on their desk and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, you know. And that was not only in when I did 5th and 6th grade, but I most of my career was 7th through 12th grade. So I was doing that with my seniors. And so, you know, just come on, let's stay on track, stay on track. And so if you think they need that at school, they need it even more at home. All right, because there are too many distractions. They're in their room with their toys, with their, you know, or if they're in the kitchen, there's food, there's snacks. If they're in the living room, there's the TV right there, hopefully off. If they are in, you know, wherever they are in the house, there are distractions because they're home. All right,
Yeah.
so you have to really work to keep them on schedule. And then I think I may have skipped one. Yes, the virtual school sometimes can lack flexibility. Okay, so that might be an issue if they want you to be on at a certain time. Whereas with self-paced curriculum, you have a much more flexible schedule. Okay, you can set the pace, you can set the schedule, and you decide when things get done. That's a big responsibility. You know, when I found that when I was teaching, I had my department head, and then I had my assistant principal, and then the principal. And then when I was teaching after I homeschooled, I was a department head, but I still had an assistant principal and principal, and I still had people that I was accountable to. Whereas when you're homeschool, you're accountable to yourself and your family, you know, which is a big accountability. It's a big, wonderful, awesome, important thing we're doing when we're
I was going to
homeschooling.
mention too, Donna, with what I've seen with some of the families that I'm working with that choose virtual school, because sometimes moms will go that direction because they're like, I really don't want to be the educator or the primary educator.
Of course, yeah.
I want something that's going to be self-directed. The challenge with online school sometimes is if the parent, it still requires parental oversight. And a lot of times, some of the programs like ASU Prep Academy offers a homeschool version of their online platform. And they do set a really nice schedule that helps the family know how to kind of stay on track with the pace. But the hard thing is it's still very flexible in the sense that you don't have to show up for, you know, a lot of stuff. So what I've found with some of the families is that they tend to fall behind in the schedule, and then the kiddos get very overwhelmed. So the parents still, even though they're not teaching the content or, you know, coming up with that content, they still have to have some oversight to check in and say, okay, did we check the boxes this week?
Yeah.
And if we didn't, what is that new schedule going to look like to try to get through the material? Because it can be really easy to fall behind in some of the virtual school environments. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that with virtual schools, some of them are public school options. So if you are taking ESA funds, you have to be careful. If you enroll in a virtual public school, you lose your ESA funds. So you want to make sure that if you are picking a virtual curriculum, that it is a private pay, true homeschool environment. But they can be both very, very nice. And like Donna said, even with self-paced curriculum, you know, mom doesn't have to be involved with every aspect of that education. You know, they can bring in help, and we'll talk about that. So I'll turn it back over to you, Donna. I just wanted to mention that with the virtual school piece of it.
No problem. No, please interject. There's a lot that, especially that might be specific to Arizona, that please, you know, let us know exactly. No, and that's true. And so you've got, you know, unless they're getting in the car and going to school and walking into a classroom and sitting down and, you know, there's flexibility that can easily become, it can take over. You know, we can be so flexible that we don't accomplish what we need to accomplish. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we talk about scheduling. All right.
Question real quick.
Yeah, sure.
So, because we were talking, you know, Kim, when I had called you last week about who are we accountable to if we're teaching our kids or not, right? And so that last slide, you guys were talking about, you know, virtual versus homeschooling and about, you know, administering tests and stuff like that. So for homeschooling and we're not accountable to anybody, like what do you mean about doing tests? Because the self-paced curriculum, so are we going to be about like
that's a good question
that we can get? And if we do those testings and whatnot, I'm assuming that it's going to be through that curriculum. you know, like just for example, the special needs school that my kids attended last year, they used the unique learning system. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but there's no testing. I mean, there's no, a lot of these special needs systems, they almost have like a no wrong answer, you know, questions and no tests. And so, I mean, you know, who do we have to do this testing? And, you know, I mean, I guess if you want to get a diploma, you would.
That's right. That's an excellent question, Angie. It's an excellent question. And, you know, and what we have to, I guess it depends on the case, but what we're looking at is there needs to be a way to evaluate what our child is learning. Where are they? What do they need? Because, you know, we have to remember we're preparing them. And we know that, you know, as parents, we know that we're preparing our kids to be adults someday, you know, and so wherever they are, you know, we're evaluating them. My nephew is a wonderful, just sweet Down syndrome child. Wonderful. I love him, and my sister does such a good job with him. And she homeschools him actually, and so she still has ways to evaluate how he's doing, you know, how kind of like benchmarks, I guess, but on your own, you know, it's not that we're going to have people coming in our home and testing our kids and that kind of thing, but as parents, just to kind of get an idea of where we are, whether we choose to use testing that's in the curriculum, whether we choose to use you know, even standardized testing, there needs to be some way to evaluate where is my child.
Gotcha.
Whether it can be an oral evaluation, it could be even you just sitting down sometime at Starbucks with just your thoughts and okay, where are we right now, and where do we need to go by this time, something like that. So that's a very good question, Angie. Excellent question.
And our tutors, our tutors, Angie, also are doing that as they're working with students. So whether I'm working with a, you know, public school kiddo that we're doing after school tutoring with, whether we're working with our homeschool kids, our tutors are constantly assessing where they're at, because it's important to know you don't want to move on too fast and you don't want to linger too long.
Right.
So it's not, back to your question, it's not that the state of Arizona is going to come in and say, Angie, did you do these tests and things like that? It's just to make sure that as you're moving along, or as that tutor is moving along with them in that particular subject, that they're ready for that next step, or they need to work more in this area. So that's really where it comes into play. And there's some other things I know Donna talks about in just helping them grow as human beings through, you know, a little bit of the testing process, because in life, there's a lot of tests that we go through. So it's helpful there too, but it's more of a skill building and to ensure that, you know, they're progressing as they need to, you know, versus a check and balance against the state of Arizona that you're hitting all these benchmarks.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent question, Angie. Please. Anytime.
And then, so Kim, your gals that come and do the tutoring, I mean, of course, they're going to be doing that in the assessments and
absolutely.
And so, but as far as curriculum, we're just, I mean, we're going to talk about different curriculums and how to pick, right? That's part of what we're doing today. Okay. So, and then
yes. No, these are great questions.
That you're going to have come tutoring, they, I'm assuming, can teach whatever curriculum that we've decided.
So when you have a tutor involved, and Donna can kind of speak to this, because I know a lot of our parents start out without a curriculum, and we very much encourage them to. So we do want to have a curriculum in place at some point, because it gives us something to follow along with. It makes sure that we are hitting benchmarks, touching on all the areas that we need to. The tutors are going to come in with their own activities in addition to the curriculum if the parents have a curriculum in place. So they're going to come in with, you know, different activities that meet your child at their learning style, but they also, and I have, you know, one mom that has a particular curriculum, and that tutor will follow along with that curriculum and teach aspects out of that curriculum. But in addition, she'll supplement activities as well as needed, you know, bringing in manipulatives, bringing in games, bringing in visual, you know, because he learns very well visually, and this is a textbook curriculum, so they'll bring in visual activities. So it can be whatever you need it to be from a tutoring perspective, but having a curriculum in place is very, very helpful, because it makes sure that if that tutor is working with them, that they are kind of following a path and helping to direct what it is we're working on. Not that they can't do that from a tutoring perspective, but it just gives a much better baseline to work with.
Right. Here's an example. When I was teaching, before I homeschooled, I was teaching 7th through 12th grade. And I was in a school, and I was given the standards, and I was given curriculum, and I was given, everything that I needed to do. I could add my own activities, and I added my own extension to my lessons, but I had a guide. When I began homeschooling, I was homeschooling first graders. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start, because I had only taught kids who were, already, they were 7th and 12th through 12th grade. So when I started first grade, I realized I was helping especially since my children had been in a kindergarten here in Mexico. So they had learned to read and write Spanish before English. So here I was teaching them to read and write English. And it was difficult at the time, as a new mom. And a first-year homeschooler. So I relied heavily on the curriculum and on the teachers' editions and on the textbooks to help me know, okay, this is what we can say. If your student does this, then you can go to this. If they're having trouble here are some activities to do. And I personally needed that guide, so when I first started, and then, and then as you homeschool, you really get into this rhythm, but it takes a while. So curriculum can help you. And some of the popular choices that we found, and I loved researching this. When I was homeschooling 20 years ago, there were maybe 3 or 4 choices. There was, no online kind of help really. And so here I have, at least in my case, and probably because I wasn't living in the States, I didn't have as much access to what people had, but I found so many wonderful programs in my research. So here are just a few. I have a couple of pages of some, and we have Power Homeschooling, which I found is a private organization, and it aids parents, but you have a lot of freedom in what you would choose to do. Ignite Learning Academy, I actually spoke with them, and they said they're happy to help. Yeah.
Are these all classes that are all curriculums that you can use or teach, Kim?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, anything you select, you would share that with the tutor, and then the tutor would work within that curriculum to provide the tutoring services. So they would work through that and teach from that. Yep.
So these curriculum, are these the ones that you guys have that we wouldn't have to purchase, or we purchase the curriculum and then you guys know how to teach it?
That's a good question. Yes. So the parent purchases the curriculum. So I'm specifically a tutoring company. So we don't have a specific curriculum that we come with, but these are basically, this list that Donna and I compiled are a list of what most of the homeschool parents are utilizing. But for example, I know, Angie, you and I talked about a program that you're in the process of looking into that your son has used before with a tutor and in one of the schools he was at. That certainly would be a great choice as well. It's really finding what is going to work best for your child and their learning style. And that's where it can be kind of daunting. But these are some of the programs that a lot of the families have picked, whether it's online, textbook-based, paper-based curriculum. So these are just some popular choices for families to kind of get a start. Because I often see families asking in the homeschool sites, where do I begin? What curriculums do you use? And these are the ones that the moms are often recommending.
Exactly. And at the end of the presentation, we have all of these links. So we'll be able to get those to you, and you can go in and investigate. Yes. And so, Ignite Learning Academy is local there. It's in Scottsdale. But you enroll, and they it's a little pricey, but it looks like a really good option. Discovery K-12. I think most of you have probably heard of that. It's an online public school system. Liberty Online Academy, The Good and the Beautiful, both faith-based. With The Good and the Beautiful, I know you can, I believe Michelle, hi Michelle. Michelle uses The Good and the Beautiful. It's a really good curriculum. It's very, adapts very well to homeschool. Liberty Online Academy is a little more structured. It's also a very good option. Apologia has textbooks or online. You can choose. And Apologia is very, very heavy in the sciences. They offer everything, but I had a family here in Mexico that used Apologia. They really liked it. And then there's this little website I found. It's kind of cute. It's called The Backpack. And basically you could just go on and find used textbooks for really cheap price. So if you know of something, a certain vendor, something that a publisher that you really want to use, but you want to pick and choose, you can go there. They have used ones, very economical. But they also offer bundles. So you can go in and say, okay, I want 3rd grade, and they'll give you a 3rd grade bundle. I also found Gather Round, master books, teaching textbooks, The Well-Trained Mind, Sunlight Curriculum, Easy Peasy All-in-One Homeschool, and Time for Learning is an online curriculum. And all of these have something that they offer. So each one is special, but each one has Gather Round focuses a lot on unit studies. So and the idea is gathering the family around and just all of the grades together and everyone learning, but learning what you need, but everyone's studying the same thing. So like you buy a package and then everyone's learning about space exploration, for example, is one of the ones I saw. And I'm kind of a NASA nerd. So I have a NASA cup, NASA sweatshirt, NASA t-shirt. And so I was like, oh, I want to get that. But, my kids are in, one is just received his MBA from GCU, and my daughter is in college, so I don't have anyone to use it on. But but Gather Round is that kind of, you buy the unit, and all of these have their strong points. And so at the end of the presentation, we have all of those choices there for you, and there are probably others that you might see or maybe you've used that you would suggest, and that's great. These are just ones that we found in our research. Okay, and then I'd like to touch on 2 very, very important aspects of homeschooling. One is your yearly organization, and then we're going to look at our daily organization. So this is something that I learned to do when I was teaching before I homeschooled, and then I applied this when I homeschooled, and then I used it when I was in school again as a teacher for the last 7 years until 2019. And so yearly organization, and this is, I think we can all relate to this. Life just goes, you have stuff going on all the time. You think you got your ducks in a row, and one of them starts taking off this way, and so that just happens. And so, but the more planned out your year is, the better you can handle those moments when things come up. And so here are just a few really personal suggestions. But the first thing I used to do is I would go somewhere relaxing, wherever that was that I enjoyed. It usually was a park. And in Mexico City, those are not easy to find. So if you find a park, you're like, oh, a park. So I would go to a park and I would just take a few hours to plan. I would take my books with me. I loved it. It was so much fun. I'm getting all excited just thinking about it. And I would just take my books and sit down, and I would just plan out my year. And I would say, okay, by Christmas, I want this done. By the end of the year, I hope to be here. And I would just map out the school year. Okay, and I would just map it out loosely. Now, when I was teaching in the most recent school I was in, the last 5 years I was there, we were going through our accreditation. So we had to come up with we had to develop all of the curriculum documents for every single class that was taught in the entire school. And we had to map out every single unit, every single lesson, the entire year. And so we don't need to be that detailed in homeschooling, but we do need to have an idea of where we're headed. And so I would map out my school year loosely, and then I would do lesson plans for each unit. So depending on how much time I had, I would try to get as far ahead as I could, but if I could at least get the first quarter, I would kind of split myself up into quarters. And then I would go, okay, the first 9 weeks, I'm going to make sure we get through this unit. And so then I would go in and I would make lesson plans. And, if you ever need help, we can help you with that. I have documents that I use with homeschoolers and that I used in school that can help kind of just map out. Doesn't matter the curriculum you use, any curriculum can be adapted to it. And then, so once you've got your school year mapped out, and then you have your units mapped out and you know where you're headed, then reevaluate several times. Why do I say this? Because as you're homeschooling, you know your child. So if your child is like, Mom, I got this, and you've given a pretest maybe or pre-evaluation, and you see that they have this concept, like I said before, we don't need to spend a ton of time on that. They got this, so let's go on to the next thing. So you can make an adjustment in that schedule. Whereas in a traditional classroom, the teacher can make certain, I used to give some of my kids a little extra work that needed it. I would give accommodations to some of my kids who needed that. But for the most part, I had a schedule I had to stick to because we were an accredited school. So there were certain days and certain teaching hours, Carnegie units, they call them, per unit time, that I had to be in front of the student had to be with the teacher. So we had to make sure that we fulfilled that. With homeschool, you can make those adjustments. If you've got a good plan, it's easier to reevaluate. And then you can just move it up or move it back. And then also for this yearly organization, try to schedule in field trips. Now, my husband and I used to take frequent trips back to the United States from Mexico. And so we pack up the kids, we get in the car and we go. But since I had an idea of where we needed to be, we were able to homeschool on the road. And so, but you could schedule in those field trips, family vacations, official holidays. Go ahead and try to give your child the same holidays that kids in a traditional classroom are getting. And then especially if they have friends or cousins or neighbor friends that they play with, if they're off school, they're off, your child is off school also, and you can go out and do something with them. So it just helps them, it gives them that feel of being in school if they're missing school. Of course, you have co-ops, which we didn't have here in Mexico. So that's a wonderful, wonderful resource. And in other words, schedule in breaks, because homeschool is a daunting task. And we need to be able to have that time to breathe, to step back, to look, and if we know where we're going, then we can do that without feeling guilty. There's nothing worse than feeling like I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, but I need a break. It's a horrible feeling, and I used to get that a lot when I homeschooled. But if we have a schedule, then we can do that. Okay, and then find out what works with your family, for your family, in terms of year-round school or a traditional one with a summer break. So maybe you want to go all year and just take frequent breaks in that 1 year. That's fine. Maybe you want to try to stick to a traditional 10-month plan, start in August and finish in June. Whatever works for your family, and just make that schedule. And then I would schedule, and this is where the question that Angie had about assessments, schedule some kind of broad assessment. I liked to kind of see where my kids were in the fall and then evaluate them again in the spring, just to give you an idea. If they are in the same place in the spring as they were in the fall, then we need to make some adjustments. It's normal in the fall to have, if you've taken a long summer break, to have forgotten some of what they've learned, and just to get them back into schedule. And I'll give you a little tip. In school, the first 6 weeks usually of whatever we teach was usually review of the end of the previous year, just to get kids back into what they had forgotten. So, but some kind of assessment, this is up to you as a homeschool mom. You can, or parent, you can choose to, use a standardized test, and you can get those online for free. There are a couple of states that you just can go in and get the test and take them. You can purchase tests and administer them to your child, and you can make it fun. You can say, okay, here we have our, and give them candy and a break, and just like we do in school. And kids used to love achievement test week when when we would give them, because they knew it was something different, and something fun. But it doesn't have to be that. It doesn't have to be those assessments, but that is one thing that you can do. Or you can just give them a general assessment of where they were 9 weeks before and where are they right now, and so just an idea to see where your child is. And since you know your child better than anyone, whether your child is where he or she needs to be. And then after
Donna, real quick,
yeah.
I was just going to mention, because I know Angie, you asked again, the tutors can do that as well. So, again, if you're kind of wanting to take small aspects of the education and you're having the tutor, do the reading and the math, they can come in and they're going to, like I said, be assessing throughout, but they are going to assess, at certain points in time. And if you want a specific schedule and you say to your tutor, I'd like an assessment in December and an assessment in June to figure out what that, where my kiddo is at, that's certainly something you can have the tutor support with as well.
Yeah, yeah. And these assessments can be done orally as well. They don't, you know, it doesn't have to be the just child there stressing over. My daughter, for example, is just not a comfortable test taker. She struggles in test taking. But in college, she has not had a choice. She's had to take these evaluations. And so, and she's learned, you know, and she's doing well. And she's studying marketing, and she's realizing she really likes it. And so, you know, but some can have the oral evaluations work too. So it doesn't have to be I guess what I'm trying to say is the assessments and testing don't have to be they don't have to be as stressful as they sound. You know, they can be something that that can be done in a way that challenges a child without making them stressed to the point where they shut down. You know, and once you know your child, once your child shuts down, you just got to stop and regroup, you know, before you can go any further. And so yes, exactly. And we can help with that. And then you have daily organization. This is another thing that we can help with. All right. So find times to homeschool that work for your family. If it's morning, if you've got early birds, you know, my daughter this morning was up when she was in high school, she was up at 4 o'clock every morning. I'm not joking. 4 o'clock. She jumped in the shower. She turned on a program she liked to watch of redecorating homes or something. Something that she loved, and she would put that on kind of in the background, really quiet, because it relaxed her. She would do her work. That's how she got through her senior year. So, you know, but my son, he's up at 10:30, 11, you know, so it just really depends on what works for them when you're homeschooling. You have this freedom when you're homeschooling. All right. So find times to homeschool. It might be morning, it might be afternoon, it might be evenings. Okay. But find a time and try to stick to that, schedule as much as possible. Designate a place to store everything. If you've got books and textbooks and notebooks and things that are for your school, at school, we have textbook closets. So we would go in, and those are one of my favorite places. You walk in, just like, wow, cool, science and history and Spanish and English over here and literature over there. And it was just fun to walk into it. But if they have a little place, it doesn't have to be a big place, but just a place where you can keep everything together, so then you know where it is. And let your children have a part in choosing their setup. Where do they want to take their class? Let them help you get that textbook closet ready if that's what you're doing. If you're some of the virtual schooling, you'll have no textbooks, everything will be online, but let them set up their station, okay, a place where they can go. Choose daily objectives. And the time to meet those objectives will vary day to day. What do I mean by that? Basically, okay, today, this is what I want to accomplish. If I accomplish this at 11 o'clock, I accomplished it. If I haven't done it, and I've given myself until 1, okay, we might have to take a little longer, but choose objectives, daily objectives, something you know that you want to get to this point by this day. And of course, always being able to stop or push ahead if you need to. Learn when you, not just your child, when you or your child needs a break. My husband used to come downstairs because he would hear me saying, "It's hut. U-T, ut, you add H, it's hut, hut." And he would hear me and I had this bag with Jesse's words. And this is that first year homeschooling that I did when it was first grade. And he's like, "Okay, everybody, break time." Okay, but remember, at the same time, we're teaching our kids to push through when we insist they finish a task. And you know that as a parent. So, and that applies also to their work. So sometimes we need a break, and sometimes, you know what, we need to push through this. And you know when that needs to be. And just remembering that students do better with a routine, so just like we mentioned earlier, not letting flexibility take over. It needs to be a part of our schedule, but we do need a routine. And then build in some intentional enrichment activities that will enhance your lesson and the student engagement. Okay. And that's where all of the, you can go outside for class. When I was teaching in school, I even used to do that with my students. And one day we were reading a story called Top Man. And it's a really cool short story about these people who trying to climb to the top of the summit of an icy mountain. And it's an awesome story. Well, it was in the 20s outside here in Mexico City. And when it's cold here, it's cold. I took them outside. I said, bundle up. We went outside. We sat on the soccer field, and they were freezing as we were reading the story about climbing up a mountain and, with the ice. And it just came alive because everyone was cold and we could really feel what the characters were feeling. Don't worry, no one got sick. But we did some little things like that. If you've got a story about a child, a boy who is exploring a creek, and you have a creek, okay, go there and read the story there. You can go on field trips. You can use manipulatives, of course. If you're having science, our chemistry teacher used to take the kids to the kitchen, and she had cooking week. So for a whole week, they made all sorts of, they would do zucchini bread and all sorts of things to see how food changes when it's to see what those chemical changes are like. So chemical changes as opposed to physical change. Of course, art, music. In the States, you guys have so many options for going to a play by a little theater, for going to a concert. Oh, just so much. And so, think about all of that you can bring into homeschooling, and you're going to enjoy it too. It's a lot of fun.
And within, the homeschool community and on that vendor site, Angie or Michelle, you can find, places that you can also use your ESA funds to bring in someone to offer PE, to teach art, or join a co-op, to do those kinds of things. And that's what I often will encourage my parents to do. If they're not wanting to take over the hard stuff like the reading and the math, and they really want to have an expert come in and work with their child in that area, that's what they will often hire tutoring support for. But then mom might say, and I think Michelle, you might be one of those parents that you're like, I'll do the science. Like, I love the science. I will get the kids. That's something I'm good at. And that's where I can get involved in my child's education. So it doesn't mean that you're doing all of these things yourself. You can hire help for the areas that you don't feel confident in. And then, do the stuff that you're like, I am good at. Like, I love music. I see guitars sitting behind you, Angie. Maybe that's your thing, so maybe you take the music.
Husband's office.
That's cool.
Maybe he does the music. So, I think at the end of the day, it's important to have these other pieces. And sometimes I have worked with some parents that get really caught up and they just want the reading and the math, and they don't really add these other elements in. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But, it is important for kiddos to have stuff outside of just the reading and the math, to make sure that they're getting, a pretty enriched educational experience.
Exactly. And we, and that's any age. So we always think about, well, we can have the most fun when the kids are in, third or fourth grade and a little bit older. But once they get in high school, they don't want any of that. I tell high schoolers, they love that stuff. When we did Romeo and Juliet, of course, I took them outside. We had winding stairs. I kid you not. We had winding stairs that went up to a balcony. I sent Juliet up there, and Romeo was down there, and we all stood outside and we did the scene. So yes, it doesn't matter their age. All kids like that, even college kids. Very good. Awesome. And let's see. Okay, I'm having trouble changing. There we go. Okay, and now here we get to the assessments. Okay, so let's go in with an open mind. We're going to look at assessments, and we don't need to be. I totally understand. All right. But let's talk just about the importance of assessments. And what I mean by assessments are an evaluation, and I think we've pretty much talked about that. Just where is your child? Or where are they at this point? And we do compare to other kids, and I'll get to that when we talk about map assessments. Okay, we do kind of just to give us an idea of where should they be, but there's a lot of leeway there, And so there are many things. There are homeschool testing services. I found some that are online, and there are even some that are in home. And we talked about they don't come to your home. If you want them to, there are services that will come to your home and will test your child, but you don't have to opt for that. There's something called Homeschool Boss, and they offer map assessments, and these are the ones I used at the last school that I was at, and we loved those assessments because it was almost like a game for the kids. You take the assessment, and as you answer a question, they keep making the questions harder and harder. And then, if you miss a question, they'll put it to a different level, and they adjust it for your level. So you really know where your student is in these. So they're really just competing with themselves. Okay. What do I know? And then you can get older achievement tests, the California achievement tests, you can get them, and they even have accommodations for students who are on an IEP. Okay, so there are plenty of ways to still get an idea of where our children are. Even a local private school, and this is what we did. Local private schools may allow your child to sign up to take their achievement test. Okay, I would take a group here in Mexico City. We'd find a college or a school that was giving the for high schoolers the ACT and SAT, and I would load up the car and we'd drive down at 5:30 in the morning. And we grab breakfast and we go and we'd all take our achievement tests, or our ACT or SAT, and it was fun to do that. But a lot of times schools will allow you, if they have testing time, like the MAP testing, normally it takes about a week. So what we would usually do, at least 4 days, and then your child is allowed to go. You would have to, contact the school, but there are schools that do that. A website that I absolutely love is Khan Academy. And Khan Academy began as simply a website to help people prepare for college testing. But now they have branched into, through the years, there's very little that you cannot find on Khan Academy, and it's free. Okay, and you can get on there. And my daughter even used this in high school. She was having trouble with algebra. And so she got on there. And I set her up. I said, okay, let's try this. And I had used it in school, but I had, math, as Michelle knows, and Kim knows, math is not my thing. And so maybe I need Khan Academy. And so they would go in, but they were so much fun. I was like, oh, this is fun. Let's do another lesson, because they have someone's drawing, you can watch the whole lesson. Then they ask you questions. And then once you've got it, they move you up to the next one once you've passed that. So it's it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and they offer everything. So Khan Academy is a wonderful, wonderful resource. And then another thing to think about when it comes to assessments is this. Let's say your child wants to go into a field that might require some kind of certification exam or some kind of entrance exam. When we give them assessments, we help prepare them for that, but we help prepare them in a loving environment, and so we are helping them, we are teaching them how to do this, because we don't know what my son changed his major when he was in college. He totally, everything that he talked about for 3 years, after one semester, he changed completely. And it was fine. I mean, we weren't upset about that, but we don't know what our child is going to want to do in the future. So we want to give them the best tools we can, the best possibility that we can of succeeding. And so sometimes that means helping prepare them for these exams or certification and that kind of thing. And so that's just something to think about. Kim, did you have anything?
No.
No. Okay.
No,
All
good.
right. All right. Okay. And then this is where Kim's going to come in. Ask for help. Okay. This homeschooling now is a daunting task. And so there's so much help out there. You've got co-ops, public school programs that will let your child participate with and that will bring in socialization. It has extra layers to your education. Of course, tutor, all right, hire out for some things that you aren't confident doing. Bring in music, arts and sports, any kind of extracurricular activity. Accountability coach. Sometimes, as parents, sometimes someone else can do a certain little skill. Our students sometimes respond better to someone outside of us. If they're with mom or dad all day doing something, and then someone else comes in and says, this is what we need to do. Sometimes, at least in my case, my kids responded better to them than to me. So, in certain areas, not completely. Hello. And so.
This is the one.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
You're such a cutie. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes.
And with those online programs, that's what I've often done with my parents, because all of the education is there. The computer system is, running them through lessons, or they're online with a teacher, depending on the program. But again, it has that set schedule, and kiddos, if, some parents, especially if it's like a middle school, high schooler, they're, sitting there kind of independently doing that work. And again, they have a lot of distractions. And what is a priority for a middle school, high schooler? Probably not education. Mm-hmm. So often they'll fall behind. So what I've done in those cases, the tutor is there to kind of provide supplemental instruction. So where they're getting stuck, or they're struggling to understand a particular concept, But in the same respect, they just need someone to help keep them to that schedule, check in where they're at if mom can't. Because sometimes when parents are doing the online school, mom is still working, dad is still working,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kiddos are kind of self-directing themselves. So a tutor can come in, even if it's twice a week for an hour, and kind of check in and then just do more homework help, more supplementary tutoring. So that's where we've kind of helped families in that situation,
Right. Yeah.
from an accountability standpoint.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's something I would have loved to have more help doing when I was homeschooling my children. I had other moms that we helped each other out, but we were a very small group at that time. But now there's just so much out there, and then of course other therapies, you know, speech, occupational therapy that can come in and help. Reading, extra reading support, you know, math support, anything that you think your child could use some help with, they could come in. And then we can also help with curriculum selection, scheduling. You know, you want me to sit down with you and make out a schedule for the year? I'll do it. We'll map out your whole year. We'll sit down. What do you like? What do you have going on? And, you know, that kind of thing is just one additional support, because we have a lot on our plate, especially this past year. I think most of us have realized just how much we have going on, you know, and you know, my hat is off to anyone who homeschooled this past year, who had to jump, or because, you know, who found themselves homeschooling this past year, you know, and so this is just a way, you know, just an extra help with lesson plans, setting schedule, you know, maybe giving, you know, brainstorming with you, just brainstorming. I love working on teams, love it. And I love to be with people and just going back and forth. What about this? Have you thought about that? Okay. Yeah. You know, it just helps. You know, we're not meant to do this alone. Okay. All right. And then I'm going to let Kim talk a little bit to this. I researched a little bit for homeschooling in Arizona, what is specific to you guys. And these are what I found that are the basics of it. Basically, it requires the parent or guardian to file an affidavit of intent. Now, that's unique to each county. So if you move, it needs to be done. You need to say that you're leaving, and then you need to do it again when you get to the other county. It does need to include reading, grammar, math, social studies, and science. And then the education is mandatory, ages 6 to 16, no standardized tests required. Okay, so this is totally up to the parent. But as we talked about before, evaluating somehow just helps us know where our child is. And then Kim can tell you about the empowerment scholarship.
Yeah, so obviously there's a ton of detail with that, and it can get very, very complicated. But there's obviously funding available to families. I believe both of you guys are in that process or have utilized it. So obviously it can be used for, you know, buying curriculum, buying, you know, manipulatives, hiring in services for OT, for speech, for tutoring, for PE, for music, you know, all of those things. There's a very extensive handbook, and I obviously always encourage my parents work closely with the ESA office, because they can sometimes have different interpretations of their own handbook. But, you know, you can hire, you know, vendors that are specifically, you know, contracted through ClassWallet. Tutor Doctor is a preferred vendor through there. So, you know, as you're working with our services, you can simply invoice through us. But there are a lot of other providers out there. I know there's, you know, in-home and clinic-based speech and OT services that are, you know, ESA vendors. There are people that provide PE services, and the handbook's going to tell you specifically what criteria each person has to have. So if you are invoicing through the system, if they're already in there as a vendor, they've been vetted through ClassWallet and approved as a vendor under that criteria. So the nice thing about doing the invoicing option is that you submit it, it's going to go through. There's no question, as long as you have funding. If you do the debit card option, I think Angie, as you brought up earlier, they don't have that processing fee, but you do have to provide all that backup documentation, which a lot of my parents prefer to go the invoicing option, even if they have to pay that small fee, because you know that you're working with a vendor that's already approved. You don't have to provide any documentation. There's a list of vendors I know floating out there. I know I'm on one. I think ClassWallet has a list themselves, but I know there's also somebody through that ESA site that has built a really extensive list. I know that we joined a while back of vendors for parents, and then just those Facebook pages. There is a huge wealth of knowledge amongst the moms in this community. I'm on there all the time, and I just love seeing every parent try to help each other out. So if you're researching 2 or 3 curriculums and you're like, hey, I'm trying to decide between these 3 curriculums, here's my kiddo's situation. What do you guys think? And parents are going to jump in and say, I tried this one and this is why I liked it. Or I tried this one and this is why I didn't like it. Or, hey, anybody out there, do you provide in-home speech services? Those Facebook pages, you're going to have a bunch of vendors that are going to jump on there and, provide you information on their services. So if you have that funding in place, or if you're in the process of researching, it's great to have in place because it will help to supplement the education and the personal expense that you would have in homeschooling your child. But once you are funded, there's a ton of resources out there to bring in whatever. If you're looking to join a co-op of moms, even if it's just for socialization, I see tons of them out there where, they jump in and they just get together and they do a field trip. That way kiddos can interact with other kiddos similar to their age, similar to their personality or their learning style. And that way they get to be around other kiddos. You get to, kind of be out there with other moms and just kind of, make a better experience for them. So there's tons and tons of resources. If you have questions, like Donna and I are, can really help. But those pages are invaluable as well. There's a ton of information out there on those Facebook groups to help moms, other moms helping other moms.
Exactly. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
And so we're talking here on this homeschooling Arizona slide. The second, bullet point down must include the reading, whatever.
Yeah. So
okay, back to who are we being held accountable to, and like, why must we do that? I mean, I'm assuming this is an ESA requires that you have at least curriculum in these things. Okay, so we're held accountable to ESA for what we're teaching.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily there's a stipulation in the handbook, and I've heard lots of moms talk about it, that you have to use a
I read that
funding, right? Portion of that funding on the core subjects. So math, social studies, science, grammar, or writing and reading. But parents, you can do that through having tutoring support for those subject matters, or a lot of parents, they'll purchase a $100 curriculum in one of those areas, and that suffices for that particular requirement. Right. So they're not coming in and saying you have to spend this much time in these areas. The funding just basically says if you're going to receive funding to homeschool your child, some of it has to be used, and it can be a small sum of it for those particular areas. So some parents use, like I said, a teeny amount, buy a curriculum, they do all the teaching. Others hire a ton of tutoring support in that area because that's where their needs are. But some that use less funding, they use the rest of the funding for therapies, for OT and speech, for extracurriculars. So you just have to use a small portion of that funding towards, those areas. I don't think they have a set dollar amount, Angie. I think, like I said, their parents are like, yep, I bought $100 curriculum and that was sufficient enough. So there's not a specific dollar figure. There just has to be something spent, towards those areas. Good question.
Yeah, a lot of good questions today. All right. And then I included here just some pitfalls to avoid. And these are things that I was guilty of, every one of them at one point or another. And so just some things that I learned and things that I realized later on that I needed to work on. So for one, and we already touched on this, allowing a flexible schedule to interfere with learning. So, if we're, we look at what is the objective, okay, what are we trying to help our child? What point are we trying to help our child get to this year or this semester or this quarter or this month? And so if my flexibility interferes with that, I need to reevaluate my flexibility. I can be flexible, but I need to make sure, I know that there were days when I just had bad days, or my kids had bad days, and I'm like, okay, we're done for today. And our favorite thing was to go get a McFlurry at McDonald's. So to this day, my kids remember McFlurries, and they know that if we got a McFlurry and they got on the playground, it was because mom was having a bad day, or something. So, totally get that. Right now, when I was in school and I was having a bad day, it was a little more difficult, okay, because you have that you had to stick with. But you can do that. We just have to make sure that it doesn't interfere with the learning process. And another thing that I've seen a lot that I was guilty of, and that I've pretty much every homeschool parent I've known, at least when in my school, one of the things that I did in my school was helping homeschool kids transition into traditional classroom. And so parents would come in, and then I would help them, and I would say, hey, he's okay, don't worry, we'll take care of him, and so we just want to make sure that kids were comfortable when they went back into a classroom, because we worked with a lot of families here in Mexico, Americans who traveled a lot. They might be stationed 2 years one place, and then they would come here, and their child, had lived in Costa Rica before, or the Dominican Republic before, and now they're living in Mexico City, and there's just their lives are getting uprooted. And so having they needed that. But one thing that I saw commonly was that many children were not accustomed to doing independent work. And what do I mean by that? I did this as a parent, and sometimes I was guilty of doing it as a teacher. Okay, you help a little too much. Okay, so I would go over and say they're taking a test, give them a test. On a good day, I would give them a test, walk away, or a quiz or whatever they were doing, and come back and then look at it. But, there were some days when I would stand there and go, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
My boy
Now,
would-
what about, have you thought? So I was just there, coaching them, and they would get the answer, and they'd feel happy, and I'd feel happy. But did I really help them? And so I had to stop and think. I had to kind of stop and go, okay, working on a large project. I had I had a student one time who came in, and there was no way this child built this thing that he brought in. It was this giant contraption for a science class. And I'm like, okay. And of course, the parent was there the whole time explaining the whole thing, when it was supposed to be the child explaining the whole thing. Now, I helped my kids in their projects. We had to do the Globe Theater for Shakespeare. Of course, I was the teacher, so I had to be careful there. But there were so many, things that we could do. We need to help them and guide them, and also help them be independent, just like we do at home. When we help them learn to cook, or to do their own laundry, or to wash the dishes, or to pick up after themselves. All the skills that we teach our child in home, we're also need to try to to take that with us when we're homeschooling, so that we're teaching them to work independently as much as possible. In fact, in many textbooks and the teacher's edition of textbooks, they have what's called guided teaching and guided work and independent work. So guided work, you teach the child how to do it. Independent work, you step back and let them try, and they really need that. And it builds their self-confidence. They feel so good when they've done it, and you feel great when you see that they've done that. And so just trying to have that balance of helping, but helping them become independent, and that's our goal, or to work independently. Another pitfall is not keeping any kind of record of a grade or progress report. Now, depending on where you are, there are some states, when I was researching this, there are some states that require pretty strict reporting of grades. Okay, Arizona is not one of them. But you do want to have an idea of where your child is, and you can print out a progress report and make a big deal about it. Hey, we're going to order pizza tonight, and you guys are getting your progress reports. That just makes them feel so good, and it lets them see, hey, I've accomplished something. I've gotten up to this point, and I finished it. Wow, and it just feels great. But keeping those also sometimes are important. You might end up someday putting your child in school, and they may say, how have they done? What have they done? They might want to see something. I recommend keeping a sampling of their work. It's impossible to keep everything, but I would keep a sampling from each unit that you do, a sampling of their handwriting, a sampling of not just their, handwriting, but a sampling of their writing ability, a sampling of, their math, anything like that. Just something that you can have to show, to say, look, these are some of the things we've been doing. And another thing, sometimes a pitfall can be avoiding standardized tests, or avoiding any kind of evaluation, like we talked about earlier, in the fall and then in the spring, just to get an idea of where our child is. Because whether we like these standardized tests or not, they do gauge where our child is. And we do need to know where they are, so we can help them get to where we know that they can be. And that is just to help. And it doesn't have to be a scary thing. Another pitfall is failing to enlist aid. And I think we've covered that quite a bit in the workshop. Just the benefit, I love the saying, just it takes a tribe, just having so many people helping in this. And we are not alone, especially in this day and age, especially with internet and with co-ops and with the way that homeschool is so accepted now. 30 years ago, if you were a homeschooler, it was very unusual, very strange, but now it's a lot more accepted. Here, even here in Mexico, we have homeschool co-ops now that are becoming accepted. And then another pitfall is not keeping a good balance of working, resting, and playing. So, we need our rest, we know that. We also sometimes just need to help our kids push through. And then sometimes we just need to play, and play with our kids and just love on them a little bit. And so just keeping that balance is very important. And it's very easy to focus on one of those. It's very easy to just be driving to get this work done and not see what kind of day my child is having. And then it's easy too to just maybe rest a little too much or play a little too much. So we really need that balance. And then we have 2 pages here of links for you. Everything that we mentioned today for resources, we have them here. And then there's an additional one at the end of this page. Could you talk a little bit about that one, the AFHE?
Oh yeah, so interestingly enough, I had come across this organization a while back, and I thought, Angie, that this is where you went yesterday, but I don't think it was. But that is actually a conference. They just had it in July. I think they have it yearly, and they're getting ready, I think, in November. So it's that afhe.org. So it's an Arizona homeschool community, and it's really cool because they kind of go over like homeschooling, just not from a ESA standpoint, but more just from a philosophical standpoint. But you also get exposed to a ton of vendors. So I think there's like, when I was looking at their list, probably, and they're mostly curriculum-based vendors, services. I didn't see a lot of like tutoring services, although I believe I've been invited to come before in the past to this, but you can meet with a ton of the vendors and really see hands-on the curriculum, look at it, talk to them about it. But again, it looked like it just happened in July, and I'm not sure if they do it just once a year or a couple times a year, but I would definitely check out that website and see, even because, and I think Donna and I talked about this, like, I know this is a lot of information coming in, and no mom starts off on day one doing this with all of these things in place.
No.
I usually talk, well, a lot of the moms that I talk to that have been doing it for a long time, they will tell you that it took them anywhere from a year to 3 years to really find their groove. Mm-hmm. And I tell my parents with tutors, it takes a month to find a schedule and a system of activities and a cadence to the tutoring, sessions that feel good. Mm-hmm. Because in the beginning, we're figuring out how long can that kiddo push, how long can they focus, what types of activities or mixture of activities are going to help them meet these, specific benchmarks and learn these skills. So it takes time to really find the right system. And especially if you're looking, and I have some parents that are like, I just want to do this for a year. I want to get them some one-on-one support. And then my goal is to put them back in a public school. That's what it sometimes looks like. Some parents are like, my kid's just not going to make it in the public school system. I want to take their education into my hands, whether it's by hiring out help for a good majority of it, or having a tutor do some of it, or, whatever that may look like. This is my kid is an advanced. I mean, it's not always kiddos that are struggling. It's advanced students that aren't being challenged as well. I have several parents that have homeschooled their kids, all throughout, and they have ninth graders taking college classes right now. So it can fit into a lot of different people's worlds for a lot of different reasons. But the common theme that I hear from a lot of my parents is that it doesn't happen overnight, and you chip away at each of these things. So our goal is just to kind of give you things to think about and start to chip away at, but you're not going to have this in place tomorrow.
Oh, no.
It definitely takes time. And so, and several iterations sometimes of curriculums, a lot of parents say, I started out with an online curriculum because I was really overwhelmed and I wasn't sure if I was going to be cut out to be their teacher, or I didn't want to have to hire in a ton of help. And then they realized that the online curriculum wasn't best, or they started to feel like, hey, I can really do this. I've been kind of supporting them with an online curriculum. Now I want to teach a couple of these aspects and hire in help for these other areas, or do it all myself. Then they kind of move to a textbook-based curriculum. So like I said, there's tons of links out here to check out, but just know, like, take a breath. It's definitely a work in progress. It doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take you, if this is your child's plan and trajectory for, for the indefinite future, give yourself grace to know that it's going to take you time to find what's going to work best. A system of activities, a curriculum, the type of support that you need. It will take time to get there. But you just want to kind of pick one thing and start chipping away at it.
Exactly. Trial and error. And, when I started my first year homeschooling, I ended up switching curriculum. I used that one for the first year and I'm like, this didn't work with us, and so second grade, I chose a different one. I liked it and I stuck with it through 8th grade. So, and then you have, and I will mention this about curriculum. Continuity does help because, and here's why. When I was younger, I moved around a lot. And so one of the reasons my math skills are not awesome is because I would be in a school, I would be moved halfway through the school year very often. And when I got to the new school, they were doing something different. And so I had a lot of gaps in my math, especially in that. And so, and that's when I began homeschooling. I thought, you know what, I want to make sure that doesn't happen with my kids. So this is me. I picked one curriculum that I liked, that I realized was working with my family, and I did not change for 6 years. Now that does not need to be the case. That just worked for me. But what it helped is that it helped there not be any gaps in my child's learning. And so if you're going to pick and choose from curriculum, that's fine. If you're going to, I like the science from this one and I like the social studies from this one, that's great. My thing would be to make sure that, when we teach in a school, we have, especially accredited schools, we have standards that we need to adhere to. And so there's like a plan for graduation. That's for high school more, but there's a path that we go on and we say, okay, by 8th grade, we need to have this, by 10th grade, this, and so forth. And that's all the way through elementary. So it's important as a homeschooler to know that also. We need to know, where our child is and where they need to be. And so picking and choosing, but that takes time, and you won't, if you need to switch, if you try something this year, if you are doing something and after a couple of months, you're like, you just have that feeling as a parent that this isn't working for you, then switch. Don't, and we need to push through. But if something just is not working with your family, it might be the schedule, it might be an activity, it might be the curriculum. Switch, don't try to drag to keep going through that if it isn't working for you. And you have the freedom homeschooling to do that. And I wanted to mention 2 quick things. At the very bottom, you'll see something saying, what is my learning style.com. And this is an online free learning style assessment. You can even do it with your child. You can sit there and you click, and then at the end, they give you an idea of what learning style they are. Now we have auditory, visual, kinesthetic. We also have reading and writing as kind of a 4th learning style. And so the curriculum many times will tell you, some curriculum will cater to one specific learning style. There are some curriculum that is very much reading and writing. And so if your child if that is not their learning style, that might not be the best one to do. So if you needed help in deciding that, we're here to help. And then teacherspayteachers.com. I love this website. Okay. It is free. Oh, good. Auntie, you know it. Love this
really
website.
Inexpensive too. Yeah. Sometimes you pay for it, but it's really, really cheap. Really cheap.
And just some really cool ideas on there. And if you ever, wanted to bring in something extra, they have a lot of unit studies, which I love doing. And so I hope this has been a help. And thanks so much, Kim, for helping us. Does anyone have any questions? Or I always ask for questions, complaints, comments, suggestions.
I don't know. I mean, my whole biggest thing is just trying to get the curriculum going and ready. And when he was, both of my kids are special needs and they were in the same class because they're only a year apart, all through kindergarten to 5th grade. And their teacher, I was his like aide. When he needed something done, he would call me and ask me, like, and I made a ton of worksheets for him. He would say, I need a worksheet for the kids to do time. I want it to look like this, and I want this here and this here. And then because I can like design that kind of stuff, and I would get on my print program and I would design it for autistic kids. And, you know, like he is like this master teacher. He's great. And he actually just got over to Arizona. Anyway, they hired him for like the special ed teacher for like the entire like district thing. So he's really on there. Anyway, he would have me make all these worksheets. And so I have all of this curriculum that he taught that I helped him. I didn't help him do it
together.
I did what he told me to do. But I have all that. And so I've been using some of that now. And he used the unique system, except for he had me tweak a bunch of stuff in there that didn't work for his classroom. And so I have all of that. And so I've been using that right now, but there's a lot of things I don't like the reading, like Jake was never learning to read. And so then his next teacher, when we got out of Ken's class, Ken tried all these different things, nothing worked. She tried the Edmark system with him because I had never heard of it. Ken didn't even know about it. I asked him, like, I've never heard of that. So his teacher, she said, hey, I have this Edmark system that works really good on this one kid in my class. And so she started him on that, and like instantly he just got like 10 sight words, just because it's just repetition. And so she was the one that I had coming through the summer and using that Edmark program and having, paying her to come and teach it. And so, obviously Edmark is the reading program I want to go with, no matter what curriculum I get, because he's tried everything else. And so, like as far as the curriculum goes, I think I have a lot of things that are really good to add to what the base curriculum is going to be, but I need help with like figuring out what the base, like you said, the continuity, the same. And I don't know, do you know about the Florida Center for Reading Research, that website? And
I don't. Do you, Kim?
Oh, you should look at that. It's so, because they have all these like games with manipulatives. Mm-hmm. And each book is set up like kindergarten through first, reading obviously. And Ken actually sent me the link, said, I want this game, page, whatever, make this. And I would design it, laminate it, cut it out, put it on a board, and and then they had the ice cream with an A, and then they had all the pictures that had the ice cream on it,
Good.
And it's fabulous.
There's so much out there.
Yeah. And I actually have some of those I use. So, but like I don't have anything for science, for social studies, for what are all the,
I think Michelle is really liking the science that you're using, right, Michelle? Is she there?
She's there. I could try
to. Got her on. She's on mute.
I can ask her to unmute. See if she'll.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But like for the
I know
science. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, because I had asked yesterday at the little thing we went to, if they have those, yearly subscription, or the boxes that come every week or month or whatever they do. I mean, is that the kind of thing? I don't know that would really be what you would call a curriculum, but I mean, maybe.
Well, when we're in, curriculum, we tend to think of textbooks as curriculum, but curriculum really means anything you use to teach. So when we take curriculum, it can be a textbook, it can be manipulative, it could be an activity, it could be an extension. So all of that goes together, and all of that is your curriculum. So whatever you use to accomplish what you need to accomplish with your child, we would call that curriculum. So, it could be a website that you use, and another thing to remember is that our children are growing up in a very, 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 very digital age. And so, it's not going anywhere. So we learn to work with it, learn to incorporate that into the teaching and into the learning as much as we can, as well as with traditional methods. But that is, there are so many digital resources out there too that can help, and that is also considered part of your curriculum.
Well, so, and then when you were talking earlier about yearly complete your lesson plans, so map out the school year and complete your lesson plans. I can't even read my handwriting.
That's right. That's what I said. Yeah.
so I guess, like, how, I mean, obviously if you use like the Edmark system, it's already laid out. You do this first and this. That's a big like.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to use a different,
that's fine.
I guess
I get where you're going. If you have different curriculum, you have one for reading and one for science and one for you just get it all together. And then you say, okay, this is what we're going to accomplish in each subject each week. You don't have to teach every subject every day. You can choose to do like a block type schedule where you say, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to do science, and Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we're going to do math and reading, or, you choose whatever works for your family. But having each of those subjects mapped out, what unit, what is the purpose of the unit, what is the objective for the unit, the overall objective, and then you have the daily lesson plan. So we would have 3 different documents in school. So we would have one that would map out the quarters. This quarter, I'm doing this. Then we had unit maps.
Give me an example of that.
Okay,
this
so
quarter we're doing that like in science.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say science, and let's say I have 16 chapters in this science curriculum that I need to finish for this year for my child. Okay. So then I know I have 16. Well, I've got 4. If you go, it depends on if you're going to go all year, but either way, you're going to have roughly the same amount of weeks of school or weeks of teaching, whether you go for a year or whether you go for 10 months or 9 months, because if it's a year, then you just spread it out more.
Gotcha.
So then say I've got, and then you put it in. So you say like, okay, these 9 weeks, okay, I have 16 chapters, these 9 weeks, we're going to cover these 3 units. Okay, or these 4 units. And then the next 9 weeks, these 4 units. And then you just loosely, very loosely say, okay, by October 18th, we're going to have these 3 units complete. And then you try to give yourself like 2 weeks per unit or 2.5 weeks per unit, depending. Then you go into each unit, and you can, and that's where you can be more specific and say, okay, for this unit, what activities am I going to bring in? What field trips can I schedule that match this unit? Does that make sense? So what manipulatives or what things am I going to use? What websites am I going to use? And then of course you've got probably a textbook or an online. So what am I going to use to accomplish the goals in this unit? And then you map those out and you schedule them as best you can so that you've got a plan. I love to sit down and just have a plan. This is a silly example, but I don't like to cook. Okay, just letting everyone know, don't like to cook. I do it because if I don't cook, we don't eat. If we don't eat, we die. So that's the only reason I cook. So but I have found that if I sit down and I decide on what I'm going to make for the week, and I make out a menu for my family and myself, and then I go and get the ingredients, I enjoy it a little bit more. Why? Because I have a plan. So, when we have a plan, it just helps us, it helps us sit down and just do what we need to do. And then it helps, right? It helps.
A program or a book or something like that helps you with that?
Yes. Yeah,
like,
there we have.
I'm asking.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're asking. Yeah, are there documents that can help you, like templates where you fill it in and you say, this is what we have.
Yes.
Yep. All of that exists. And, you can, and then you can, and it works with any curriculum. So it doesn't matter what you're teaching or what you're using to teach. Even if you're unschooling, if there's something that, that you still kind of have a plan, even if you're unschooling, because you're using, you still have some kind of objective of where you're headed with this. So, and so that can, doing that and getting all of that just down so you can see it and know where you're going. Then when there's, when there's an illness, when there's a move, what happens if in the middle of the school year there's a move, there's a job change, there's a, or what if you know, visitors pop in on you, or just, you know, anything that might happen that if you have a schedule, if you have a plan, it's so easy to just let those come in and do what you need to do and then get right back on your plan. But if you don't have a plan, at least in my case, when I didn't have a plan, I felt so overwhelmed. I had no idea what was going on. And then I felt guilty because I was overwhelmed, because I didn't feel like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And then it's just this vicious cycle. And then you just want to give up. And then that's when you're like, guys, we're going to get McFlurries today. So, you know, it's, so, you know, it's just that I know the struggle of homeschooling. I also know the beauty of homeschooling. Oh, I loved having my kids around me. You know, it's making me, just giving this workshop is making me,
you want to do it.
I want to bring, you know, I'm going to say, okay, my son's married. It's too bad. You're coming back. You know, we're homeschooling. And, you know, it's just making me want to do that again. But I also love teaching in a traditional classroom. I love both. And so, and just the beauty of just seeing all of the kids working together. I see merit in both. So whatever one you've chosen and you choose, you're not going to make a bad choice. But I will mention that whatever we do with our children's education, we ultimately are responsible for our children's education, whether we're doing it at home or whether we're sending them to a school. So it's still, as the parent, it's our responsibility to make sure that they're getting what they need. And I think we all know that. You all know that. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Michelle. Science. Ask her which science.
Oh yeah, Michelle, I'm going to unmute you again.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, friend.
Hello, friend.
We want to hear about your science program that you use, that you like.
Mel Science. I said the ESA does cover it. I ordered it through. You could order it a subscription. I never really figured that out through the ESA, how that worked and how they would pay them, because I don't have the credit card. So, but you could order it through Amazon and then they'll reimburse you that way. Or I mean, you could order it directly through Class Wallet. I'm sorry, through the Amazon store. And it is a subscription.
Yeah. So you just have the subscription that comes every month. There's not like a book you get at the beginning of it that's like, this month we'll be sending you this and this month we'll be sending you this. Nothing.
No, but the first kit you get is much bigger. Like I was telling Donna this week, like you get a Bunsen burner. Like you get.
I was actually showing my husband that this morning. I went on the Mel Science thing. I was like, look, and you get like this VR thing and there's like all these beakers and that comes first. And then they send you the box.
Yes. And then you get a box, which I haven't even opened this one. We just got, it's to make crystals though. So yeah, it's that they don't tell you, it's just a kit and this is the project you're going to do. But the first kit came with like 4 projects. So we tend to do science on Saturday. That's our thing. Like, cause my husband's here and he can be more involved and hands-on because we have 2 boys and our boys are, my 13-year-old has autism and my 10-year-old is neurotypical. So they tend to, and my 10-year-old is listening. He's like, what?
Hi, Evan.
He's been listening to his teacher talk, which is cute. I told him, I go, come look, it's Miss Donna. He goes, no, this is your teaching time. I was like, oh, got it.
Your teaching time, Mom. Shoes on the other foot.
Exactly. Anyway, but they tend to sync kind of together in a lot of their level of stuff, like things like that. So we do them as a big group. So it's better if we're both hands-on doing it.
So when you do that Mel Science, because I was looking at those kits and I was wondering, a way I would think would be a good way to do it is like, say, like you said, crystals, right? Is that what it?
Yeah, I haven't even opened this.
So like if it's about crystals, would you get online and you would have other information you found other places like?
No.
Whatever. I mean, to supplement or complement, or if you're only going to do it once a week, but if maybe through the week, if you're leading up to it or after you do the.
Hold on, I'm carrying you. If it gets loud out here, my husband's watching racing. Hold on. I haven't even opened this one that we just got. So I'm going to go.
But I mean, in general, when you do your, like, I don't know, like maybe I guess if there was one about volcanoes, I mean, how much information's in the kit is kind of like a basic one. Okay, so would it be enough that you could like say, you know, you do it Saturday, so like maybe Monday you could be talking about volcanoes and, you know,
definitely
like blah, 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 and then each day you kind of lead up a little bit more until you get to the big finale of making the volcano.
That's
You know what I'm
we
saying?
do.
That's what I'm asking is like, how does that work?
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, you get books. You get books. You get books to do. Oh God.
So is it almost like it's too much stuff to just
No.
into one day?
Yes. Yeah. So like,
Okay.
and I think with one of the other ones, I'm trying to remember, I'm drawing blanks right now, but like with the crystals, they're not going to happen right away. So you're tracking it. So we're probably going to, I'm assuming it'll be like a week and we'll be watching them grow and then and then we'll have which I think last time I downloaded a sheet off the internet, maybe off their site. I know I had a sheet where we tracked our results.
Okay. So it's on Math Science that you can get on their website and
Yes.
get supplemental things
Yeah.
for that must thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and a lot, Angie, like when I talk with a lot of homeschool moms, like in terms of like a schedule that I hear is pretty common. And again, it looks different from every family. They hit reading and math a lot more, but they have history and science, you know, where they might do that once or twice a week. The nice thing is, and you have to remember, K-6 kiddos, they read to learn. So really they are getting exposed to science, they are getting exposed to history, but when they're in that K-6 world, a lot of it is continuing to enhance the reading skills through doing these activities, but it's more fun, you know, because we're doing science and we're doing history and we're not just reading a book and, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, until you get into like middle school, high school, now you remember those kiddos, you know, if you think of a public, you know, traditional school setting, they're hitting science and history every single day. But when they're younger like this, you know, those units like Michelle talked that, you know, if it's a whole week unit, I mean, if it takes all week, you might work it, but then you might take a week off and then you might do another activity. So you're not necessarily having to do history and science every single day. And even reading and math, a lot of my homeschool families will do that, you know, usually between like 3 to 4 days a week, but they don't do reading and math every single day of the week. And they don't fill everything with just reading and math. And then that's where they kind of add in the other stuff.
Right.
And that's how
exactly.
I am. That's how I feel, like, especially because the only things that I really worried about when I was trying to do it in the beginning by myself was reading and math, like, because my kiddos are younger. I mean, I always say this isn't high school chemistry. I'm not really that stressed about it, but I want them to have that knowledge and have fun things that we're doing to bring science in. And then I wasn't really worried about social studies because honestly, especially because they were both struggling with reading. Social studies really I ordered from the Good and the Beautiful, and it's really just me reading to them. They're getting to the point now where they can do a little bit more of the reading to learn, but it was really just me reading them books. I had no discomfort in my ability to do that. Like the curriculum was really just me kind of reading to them and then stopping and asking them questions. But math and reading were the two that I'm like, I'm not qualified. We struggled so hard.
Right.
And
if
Michelle, sorry,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
so what other kits do you do besides Math Science that you really like?
Everything else pretty much that I've ordered has been through the Good and the Beautiful. I ordered social studies through them twice now.
Is that a subscription kit?
No, it's the Good and the Beautiful is where I originally got all my curriculum. They're a curriculum that you can get them through ESA, and they have all the subjects. I originally did all of them, but the math and the reading, even though their curriculum is beautiful and I think very well laid out, I just wasn't qualified to teach it, quite honestly. We were struggling really. But the other ones, like I said, they have their social studies books are beautiful and you can choose, and they're all broken down by age. And they even have pre-testing on their site so you can kind of see where your kiddos are. I have their science stuff and I kind of use it a little bit, but we do science is just kind of the fun stuff that we do, or like even things we do. I incorporate science in just about everything. Like when we did a field trip to what's the sea aquarium here, honestly, they have a whole bunch of stuff on their site, which is how you can get the field trip covered, the payment for it through ESA, but they have curriculums that you can download. So like we froze blue ice cubes and floated them in warm water, and it was awesome for the sea currents. And
Odyssey, the website has curriculums?
yeah. And that's how you can get your tickets paid for.
Now, when you get your tickets paid for, is that the adult too, or is that just the child?
No, just the child.
So expensive. It's like what, $50 or something, 35, 50? It's a lot of money.
I went on a weeknight. It wasn't so bad.
Okay, but they don't, but like the ESA wouldn't pay for, or they pay for a ticket, but they wouldn't pay for like a membership or anything, I'm assuming.
I don't think so, but I don't know. I don't know.
Don't quote you on it.
Yeah, don't quote me on it. But I know they'll pay for the ticket for each kiddo. So
Okay.
many places have, because I think there's so many of us doing this.
Mhm.
I find science everywhere I look.
Yeah.
And they help
Yeah.
me with cooking. I have some homeschool mamas that have been doing it for a long time because I'm in the autism world. So they're like, everything is science. Cooking is science.
Yep.
It's baking is
It
science.
really is,
So-
yeah.
Math too. It's reading.
Exactly.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do
Yeah,
you,
and-
Michelle, are you in the Santana and Queen Creek area?
Queen Creek, yes.
You are?
Are you?
Are you? Yeah, I am. Do you guys have a co-op that you
I
are?
don't. I haven't found one yet. Do
I
you?
told her, I was like, you guys should connect because
Good.
yeah, for her boy to or her kiddos to get together. And I had told her about you, Michelle, and I had said, oh, I think she lives in that area. And I know they're always looking to try to connect with other folks too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Michelle,
a-
we had had the ESA for like 5 years and I had sent them to Lexington that whole time. And then we moved down to Queen Creek last year. And then I was like, I'm not driving up to Lexington every day. So for a couple of months and I got sick of it. So we just put him back in public school, but Jake has done awful in public school. So I'm pulling him back out now and getting my ESA reinstated right now. So
Okay.
we haven't done homeschool before, but like I said, I worked with the teacher and helped him do all his stuff. So I think I've got a really good handle on the teaching. You know, it's just that I'm not going to have time to do it all because me and Jake spending every second of our day together with the teaching. And then, you know, it's still at night and it's like too much.
This isn't just because they're hosting this call. I would say this to anybody, anytime. The best money, hands down, that I spend my ESA funds on is their tutors.
Yeah.
The best investment I've made in my children. I'm just not it's math and reading. They're so specific and you have to know how to teach it. I know how to read and I know how to do math, but teaching it, we've spent months of my kids actually regressing. I'm just not qualified. And that took, I mean, it makes me want to cry. It took for months, I struggled I have so much curriculum in my house. I think that's why I can't remember to tell you what I did with it all. I own so much. I've signed up for every online. If you can think of a cartoon character, I probably belong to an online school for my children that have that character. Like we tried everything. And until when I started having a tutor for them, they have a math tutor and a reading tutor, and I get them logged in, and we have little talks, and they tell me how they're doing, and then we just did an assessment this week, and they ask me what I'm looking for them. It's amazing, and then I just focus on the other stuff, which I call the more fun stuff.
Mhm.
And but I'm not worried now. I know that my children are growing and they're excelling and they're learning so much more than they did in the public school system. Oh my gosh, by leaps and bounds.
Mhm.
Evan's math tutor just told me he was pretty much done with I can't even think, multiplication. And I said,
I am.
what? I said, shut up. He's what
I
now?
am.
She goes, yeah, he's got that. She goes, we're going to start moving on to division. She goes, we'll always go back and touch on it. But she goes, he's got it pretty good. And I was like, shut up.
Shut the front door.
The front door. Yeah, that took a lot of the pressure off. And just, I know they're not going to fail now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what we're going to definitely with a lot of tutoring. But what had you said, Kim? What was it? Are they 2 or 3 hours a day? Or 2 hours a day?
What I usually
science.
I usually recommend for my parents spending about 2 hours a week between history and science, and then 6 hours total between reading and math. So, you know, you're hitting reading and math 3 times a week. That's usually where we start. And then some parents decide they want to do, 8 hours of tutoring in reading and math. And then the parents want to do the history and the science. And, so it morphs and changes, but usually at the very minimum, most of my family start at least with 6 hours of reading and math. And Michelle, I'll tell you, both of her tutors are online. Donna is one of them actually. And But yeah, we do in person, we do online. Again, it's whatever you need. And that will morph and change. You know, with Michelle, we started, I think it was with just the reading, then we added in the math, and then now they're adding in other stuff. And so you just kind of start simple and build from there is really what that looks like. And we can be as flexible as you need, and we can switch things up and change as, your needs grow and change.
I feel like between us, we've built my children their own little private school. And I love it.
Yeah, it's
and
awesome.
I don't have to worry. The problem with, I've looked at using my funding for private schools. The problem is where my Ethan falls with autism is he doesn't have the behaviors that would put him in an autism school that would accept him, but he's not really, he needs more support really than a lot of the the private schools. They don't really want my kiddo so much. I mean,
that's my Jake.
Is
Exactly.
it?
No
Yeah.
problems at all whatsoever behaviorally. Sweetest boy ever.
Right.
Can't read at all, like kindergarten level. They can't, knows 20 sight words, but he's super smart at, we do some coding stuff and he just is like, bam, 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 done.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
but yeah, he's 11. So he's always going to be 11 in a month. So
yeah, Ethan, his reading, there's just nothing. I don't know. I've never had tutors before in my personal life, but with my kids, there's nothing. And this isn't just a plug for that. There's nothing like the one-on-one. He gets his own teacher that's just teaching him exactly where he is. And he's both my boys. When we got our new Mel Science kit in, Evan came over and read it. He read it fluently. He's over here dabbing. He just did a dab.
He does that. I didn't know what it was because I'm old and I don't know cool stuff. He comes home, he's doing this, and I'm like, "What are you doing?"
He's like,
"Good job, good job, Evan."
Dabbing.
I know. It was just shocking. He just read it like
like nothing.
Yeah, and that was not the case before. Like not that many months ago, Hamastana.
No. Yeah. It hasn't been that long. Yeah.
The one-on-one is really key. I know I public school my kiddos, but my daughter was 3 years behind in second grade. She has a learning disability in reading and math, a memory processing disorder, and same thing. We did a year of tutoring. She's still in the school and she's getting, pull-out services in reading and math, but we saw her go from 3 years behind to grade level work in a year's time. And that's, 2 times a week on top of, education in the public school. So it's huge. It's just being able to cater it to what makes sense to them, whether it's spending more time in an area that they need to spend more time in, or tweaking the learning, delivering the learning activities in a way that's going to make sense to them or is going to be interesting to them. Just being able to cater it to what the child needs is where they tend to grow in leaps and bounds a lot quicker.
Yeah,
I'm actually really excited.
I'm excited.
Last week with me, like tutoring him, I can see things he's learned.
Yep.
Just this last week that he had on Monday, and I taught him, and then I gave him a worksheet every day. And like now on yesterday, Friday, I just went, okay, do the worksheet. I gotta go do something. I came back and he had it done correctly, and I was like, oh.
Awesome. It's such a good feeling.
So it's great.
He needs one-on-one, and he can't do the online learning because he does a speech online right now. And I have to sit in the room with him because like he'll be doing it and they'll just be like going like this and like get away. I'm like, focus, pay attention.
Turn around, look at the screen.
It's just like, oh my God. But yeah, he needs definitely online not online. It's not going to work for him. So I'm excited about having your tutor come.
Yep, absolutely. And that's what we want, is to give parents what works best for them. And, it looks different from every parent, every homeschool parent, every public school parent. It looks different across the board. And that's the goal, is to find what works for you guys and be able to provide that support.
Yeah. Well, Michelle, I'd like to, get together with you or maybe collaborate on meeting and doing, starting a co-op or finding one, or
that'd be awesome.
Up the word and say, hey, does anybody know a co-op in Queen Creek?
I haven't done a ton of looking. I'm finding this weird thing, and I don't know if you're an ESA mom, you may see this. Like there are a lot of homeschool groups that don't like ESA moms. They feel like we're not really homeschooling because we have funding. Have you seen that?
No,
yeah.
I think
from here, I'm in a bubble, and I don't know anybody. I don't.
It's just the online world
Bubble here.
Well, you guys can start yours, and I would I can guarantee you there's other mamas out there that would love it. On that ESA page alone, and I don't know if you guys are a part of there's two groups. There's obviously the vendor group, and then there's the one once you're funded. But you can, I'm sure if you guys say we're looking to start this, here's what our goals are for it, I guarantee you'll find some other mamas out there, because there's a lot of moms that homeschool out there that I see looking for services that are receiving ESA funds. So I know there's other parents out there in similar boats to you guys. So I bet you'd be able to find some other families that would be open to that. For sure. And I know there's a group, I mean, this is in Eastmark, so this is, a little bit north of you guys, but I know there's a group here that get together and they do a lot of like joint field trips and things like that to bring their kids together. They'll do stuff where they'll go get ice cream, or they'll go to the hockey arena, or, the ice rink, or they'll go to a aquarium or whatever. So I know they're out there. You just gotta search and you'll find it.
Okay.
You guys have so much in the Phoenix area to do.
Yeah.
A plethora of activities,
Yeah.
places to visit.
That's the big thing I feel like I'm missing, is really the socialization piece of, I'm trying to shush my phone.
What makes me feel so bad about Jake is, even when he was in Lexington with in an autism classroom, he still really struggled with making friends. A lot of the other boys didn't really, for instance, one thing that really pissed me off is one of the boys had a birthday party and invited all the other boys in the classroom, but didn't invite Jake. Right. And so then he was saying, oh, Jake, he said, well, I can't invite everybody because the pool in my house is only so big. And then Jake jumps in. He's like, oh, you could have it at my house because we have a big pool. And they're just like, it's like,
Yeah.
oh my God. So even at in the school he's in now, the public school, he was getting bullied really badly and we didn't even know about it. And he was coming home and getting more and more depressed and crying because he had to go to school and freaking out. And that's not his personality. He's such a bubbly, sweet kid. And even OT and speech therapists were like, what's wrong with Jake? We're like, we don't know. We can't keep asking him. And then finally one day he had come home with food down his shirt, and he's not a messy eater. We're like, how did you get that food on your shirt? Oh, some kid threw it at me in the lunchroom. And I'm like, what? He's like, what else? Oh, he does this